I was paid too much, partying lots, drinking lots in a very high pressure environment. A colleague of mine, Andy, he recommended this app Headspace, and I started doing the Headspace, and I got pretty much instant relief the first time I did it. As I was doing this meditation more, and I decided to take a break from alcohol, 90 days. And then, of course, that cleared the way for more and better habits. When you're on the train, you're going, you're exercising, you're eating it right, you're meditating, you're doing all your journaling. When you're not on the train, you're like, I'm going to eat donuts and just hate the world, right? And it's like, how do you get on that train? Meditation, I'm a huge advocate of. It's part of all of our programs. It's critical to behavior change. It's key to living a good life.
Awesome, really excited for this chat as Ruari's someone I've known for a while, as I actually have been through his 1 year no beer program, and it's been a bit of a cosmic bridge for myself. As many of you will know, I'm someone that doesn't drink, and that's been thanks to 1 year no beer. But yeah, Ruari, I was explaining this concept to you before of the cosmic bridge, someone that helps you connect your profession with your passion, or like your spirit and your material world, your work and your life and your daily job. So for you in your life, what has been your cosmic bridge?
Yeah, I think that meditation is probably the ongoing cosmic bridge that allows me to get in touch with my true self. And I found and discovered so much about my life. And really, 1 year no beer was born from just doing that 10 minutes of meditation on the way into work and back. And I started to think, that there was more to life and all of these things. So meditation led on to it. And there's a second part to that, because I think they're aligned, and that is the psychedelic therapy that I do or have been doing. I think, again, these are multiple bridges leading to a similar sort of place, which is a stronger understanding and sense of...
Wow, incredible. So I knew about... I'm not surprised about the meditation bit, should I say, because having done 1 year no beer, I know you talk about the meditation thing, and then you mentioned the psychedelic therapy. So those are two great topics I'm excited to delve into. So let's start with the meditation one. So I don't actually know your story, and obviously for the listeners who may be the first time hearing from you, so tell us about that story of 1 year no beer and how it was related to meditation. We'd love to hear that.
Well, I think let's wind back a little bit and put everything into picture. I just have to get rid of that beep. There you go. I grew up ADHD at the time on the Isle of Mull on the west coast of Scotland in the 80s. I don't think they really knew what ADHD was, so I was just hyperactive. It was later diagnosed with ADHD. But my parents would say I slept 4 hours in every 24, and ultimately I had this hugely overreactive brain that I didn't really know what to do with. And the hyperactivity and everything continued through my life, and this noisy brain ruled me, really. It ruled my life. And I was just reactive to this noisy brain, and it would either be anxious, it would be self-deprecating, it would be a bully, it would be, controlling. And at the same time, in there was this wrestling of desire to be somebody and make something of myself, and enormous drive, way beyond what most people had, People were going out partying and I was studying, or I was, they opened up a learning centre in just down the street from me in Glasgow when I was living there. It was open 24 hours. I'd be in there at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, still in there. And I'd be like, why are other people not here? This is like a free use 24-hour facility to learn stuff. So I was just always on enormously. And I think when I actually through the TV program The Apprentice, which is another random story, but I ended up becoming an oil broker in London. And for me, two worlds collided there. Despite being extremely hardworking, I also played very hard. And these two worlds of partying and being successful, got aligned with oil broking. And the thing about oil broking was, in that day, less so now, it was absolutely revolved around booze culture in the city. It was the wheels, it was the grease that kept the wheels going, and I was good at it. Really, really good at taking customers out, good at having long lunches. Lunches that started at midday and finished at 5 a.m. And things like that. So what I didn't really realize at all at that time is that a lot of this business had given me even more exacerbated my mental health issues, and that I needed more and more alcohol to quell those mental health issues, right? And I didn't really understand at all the misalignment there, the misalignment with who I am as a person, like how I need to operate in this planet in order for me to not have addictive behavior or to not have disruptive behavior. I have to live congruent to myself. I didn't know any of that stuff. I was completely, I was paid too much, partying lots, drinking lots in a very high pressure environment. And then in 2013, very, very early days for Headspace, thanks to a colleague of mine, Andy, he recommended this app Headspace, and I started doing the Headspace, and I got pretty much instant relief the first time I did it. Okay, so, I still had a brain which was running amok inside my head, of course, but I understood that I could feel slightly calmer after doing this. And it became the transition for me, who I needed to be at work, which was aggressive, laddish, drinking, and always on, numbers, absolutely, very stressful, very nervous system exacerbating, right? So that kind of environment. In order to be that person, I had to transform from who I was at home. So that's why I meditated on the train on the way in and meditated on the train on the way back. And this meditation for me started to create awareness, as meditation does. So the big thing about meditation is, first of all, most people are not doing it right. And that's okay, because the only thing you need to do is do it, right? So you are doing it right if you are doing it. There's no other judgment there. And I think too many people have a judgment on, oh, my brain is too noisy and I tried meditation, I couldn't calm down. And it's like, well, did you walk into Mandarin class and expect to be fluent in Mandarin after one class? No, right? You need to turn up for 6 months, and then maybe if you're really lucky, you'll be able to ask for an alcohol-free beer. So at least that's my language learning skills. So in the part of taking this meditation up, I started to get this awareness. Now understanding the science of meditation, I was building a gap between stimulus and response, right? It's an amazing thing about what meditation does to your brain, changing neural pathways. It's absolutely critical in behavior change, getting awareness. It's a deep-founded awareness. But what happened is, as I was doing this meditation more, and I decided to take a break from alcohol, 90 days, and that led on to creating 1 Year No Beer and totally transforming my life. So it really all came from meditation. But the alcohol was, I'd got this awareness. Hang on a minute. Why are you drinking? Why are you drinking so often? Do you need to do this? And it took quite a long time before I took the courage to just say, no, I'm going to take a 90-day break. I'd done months before here and there. And then, of course, that cleared the way for more and better habits, which was transformational. But the thing about the meditation journey was going on, having removed alcohol, starting to get fit, improving better habits. Now I'm on, and I know people are so aware of this. It's like, how do I get on the train? When you're on the train, you're going, you're exercising, you're eating it right, you're meditating, you're doing all your journaling. When you're not on the train, you're like, fuck it, I'm going to eat donuts and just hate the world, right? Or whatever it is. And it's like, how do you get on that train? But I'm so on that train because I removed all these habits. And this is when I started to think, I'm going to deepen this meditation practice. And the meditation practice, I started, can I get up to half an hour? Can I get up to longer? And now my parents would say, it's absolutely scientifically impossible for Ruari to sit still for 30 minutes. And yet here I was now, an hour, unguided, sitting on my own. Now, I would do 2 hours of meditation just to try and push to see how long I could. And that's when I started to crack open. And it began with pain in my chest, feeling of pain. And the pain, after getting to a depth of meditation, the pain became unbearable. And I would get there straight away. So I'd be a minute of meditation and I'd go straight to this hot poker pain in my chest. What's going on? And I sought advice and I looked online and I found that this is like the beginning of awakening, right? The beginning of an understanding of some kind of experience that's trying to come through you. So focus in on it. So I went in and then I started weeping. I know this answer's gone on much longer than you hoped, Michael, I'm sorry. But I started weeping from meditation and like the weeping was uncontrollable weeping. And I was like, what the hell's going on? And this is something, again, they talk about out there that can be very common with people when you start to go deeper into meditation, is that you're having a release. Now, I'm not going to go into the detail because it would be a much longer podcast. But once I went into that meditation, I discovered something profound about my childhood, that I had basically contracted PTSD from a near-death experience when I was 6 years old, that I had no conscious understanding of or remember. It wasn't talked about, but I discovered it through meditation. So yeah, meditation, I'm a huge advocate of. It's part of all of our programs. It's critical to behavior change. It's key to living a good life. And absolutely, you can discover and change deep-seated traumas, emotions, all sorts of things, and uncover that just from meditation.
It's incredible. So yeah, there's a lot to break down there. You actually mentioned two types of train. One was more of a metaphorical train around getting on the right train, having good habits that kind of form together. But then you actually talked around your initial meditation practice, which I found interesting because you were talking about meditating on the train on the way to work when you're an oil broker, kind of living this crazy life. So I've never heard anyone do that. How does that work? Like meditating on a train? How do you meditate on a train?
Loads of people meditate on the train. You just stick your headphones on and press play. I mean, the meditation is just really closing your eyes and listening. I mean, and then for me, it was just listening to a guided body scan or something like that. In fact, I know this is total cheapskate for a oil broker earning what he was in London, but I didn't pay for Headspace for the first 6 months. I just used the first 10 free. It was free 10 sessions in the beginning, and I particularly liked the body scan one because it just started to get that awareness. And yeah, my entire life, my world, everything around me changed once I started to introduce regularly into meditation.
Interesting. Yeah, I think the reason I found that fascinating is I meditate as well, but I guess a barrier I put in my head, which from speaking to you now I don't need to do, is like I need to be somewhere quiet and I need to be somewhere without people. But as you said, it sounds like you're able to just put your headphones on the train and you're able to kind of zone out everything else and focus on the headspace.
Completely. I mean, noise cancelling headphones you're wearing them now, which is great. And the park, I realized and started to understand that the nervous system is compounded over time. And so in a day, as an example, as you start into adding in coffee and bits and pieces like that, right? Caffeine really stimulates your nervous system, increases cortisol, increases that fight or flight mechanism, which is perfect when you want to be at work. I just want to make quick decisions and let's go, absolutely. And then you put myself into an environment where it's quite toxic, quite laddish, right? Very fast, lots of numbers, nervous system, right? By the end of the day, I need a sledgehammer to get myself to sleep, because of that constant, channeling up. And that's when I was like, no, I have to get out. So I would go to St. James Park or any of those parks, sit on a bench, put the headphones on, just get that greenness and everything else, try and reset the nervous system a little bit, and then stay basically getting recovery. And this is what we do now in our high-level programs. So we use heart rate variability, monitoring people moment by moment, remotely assisting them, keeping them accountable to their habits and goals, but showing people that they are basically spending all day in sympathetic nervous system, which means they're all day in fight or flight. It means that all day their nervous system, their immune system is releasing chemicals and things like that to try and find recovery. They're not getting any recovery. So you're not recovering your organs, you're not recovering your brain, and then all of a sudden they can't sleep at night, or they add in alcohol, and this whole routine continues. And when you show people that in data, they're completely gobsmacked by it, right? And you're like, well, when you make some small shifts in here, even just box breathing throughout the day, finished a board meeting, box breathe, right? Finished an intensive brainstorming session, go for a walk. This is allowing your nervous system to get into recovery.
So essentially, kind of what you're saying, again, because a lot of this is new to me, I just kind of meditate because I know that it helps me, and I do it, like you said, after a meeting or in the morning, and it just puts me in a really good mental state, especially if it's something I'm nervous about. I try to meditate for like 10-15 minutes before or after what you're talking around. So really, as a science behind meditation, it's kind of brain recovery almost. Like if you go into that meditation state, it's helping your brain recover.
Well, there's a knock-on effect. The reduction in your nervous system then puts you into parasympathetic, right, which is your nervous system. That's how your heart is operating. You're either in sympathetic or parasympathetic. parasympathetic. Parasympathetic is helping everything to calm down. In parasympathetic, you are repairing, you are recovering. Right, and that's happening for your brain cells and for your body and regenerative and all of that stuff. And so it's really important for you to find recovery throughout the day. We can't be going through an entire day, which most of us are, and then we're wondering why we need a drink at the end of it. Well, I mean, look at what your day is doing. It's high stress, high power. There's no break. There's no recovery at all during your day. Yes, no surprise that you need to numb out at the end of a day, whether that's Netflix, binge watching, watching social media, being on TikTok, looking at porn, or having a drink of alcohol. And ultimately, if we can treat these underlying things, which is what we now do in our complete control program, we treat the underlying things that drive addiction or bad behavior. We don't like the A word, but a driving negative behavior in our lives, the need to soothe, the need to numb out, is by putting in these daily practices. Absolutely. Meditation is really key, but look at breath work. I mean, what we're starting to understand now about breath work. Here's one example of breath work, which is just mind-blowing for me. In the recent studies about grief, right, about how you handle grief, we're all going to go through grief at time, and when you look at the world these days, maybe more grief than expected to come up. Who knows, right? And so grief is an incredibly powerful triggering emotion, but there is normal grief and then there's complicated grief, right? Now, if you have a strong vagal tone, and the vagus nerve connects the brain and body, if you have strong vagal tone, you are miles less likely, I mean, it's like thousands of times less likely to get complicated grief if you have strong vagal tone. How do you get strong vagal tone? It's really simple. You build it by exhaling slowly out and training yourself through breath is how you can build strong vagal tone. So you are less likely to spend a life mourning a loved one, seeing them everywhere, thinking when you pick up the phone that they're on the edge of the phone, walking through a door and thinking they're there in that moment, seeing them visually and suddenly thinking there's somebody in the room, constantly feeling sad. You are much more likely to have that, less likely to have that experience if you learn good breath work and train your vagus nerve. Like, that is astounding.
That is incredible, extremely powerful, and grief is something we all go through, and breath work definitely is something that's helped me in kind of traumatic times I've had. I wanted to come back to something you said around you don't like the A word. Was that addiction? So that's a word you don't like, addiction?
Only because everybody runs out the room. The thing about what we've always tried to do here at 1 Year No Beer is I never felt like I was an addict. I mean, I wasn't pouring whiskey on my cornflakes. I wasn't waking up and having a drink in the moment. There's a lot of perception about what an addict is or addiction is. Addiction to the vast majority of society is people doing that, right? Waking up in the morning and pouring whiskey on their cornflakes, or all day injecting themselves. That's what addiction is. But that's not what addiction is. Addiction, the truth of what addiction is a behavior that we do uncontrollably, even though we know it hurt, right? So therefore, there is so much addiction. In reality, we're all behaving in an addictive way. We're trying to soothe one way or another through one thing or another. And this is the thing about trying to create a life that doesn't need soothing. Trying to create a life and a way of existing where we don't need to numb out. We don't need a substance or an external thing to make us feel better about our lives. And that's the key thing. But if I start talking about addiction, then most of society switches off because they say, well, I'm not like that. I'm not putting a needle in my arm every single day. I'm not waking up morning so therefore I'm okay and I'm going to carry on as I am. And that's why we stay away from that word, even though that's what we're dealing with in every part of 1 Year No Beer, in everything we do in supporting people. We're talking about addictive behavior. We don't use that word because the vast majority of society perceives it to be something. And it's much easier to talk to people about their bad habits and say, this is what we're here to deal with. Now, there's two flip sides to that as well, is because unfortunately what we did in society for a long time is that we just shunned away addicts. You need to go over there. You're an addict. You're disassociated from society. You're a problem person. And all that does is drive further addictive behavior, shame, stigma, all of these negative things. And so not only do people want to be not disassociated with that, like adversely, is that whole scene drives very, very poor behavior without people actually admitting they have addiction, right? How many people know somebody who's drinking daily or most days or several times a week? That's addiction, full stop. I don't care what you say. Who's like, oh, no, I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm perfectly normal. I knew people who used to drink 3 bottles of wine a day and they're like, this is perfectly normal. I'm fine, right? Functioning alcoholic. Don't like the alcoholic word either. So in order to get everybody to the table, to listen to what we have to say, and ultimately what we're saying is life can be so much better when you create a life that doesn't require numbing out, okay? And part of that is to focus on removing alcohol, because that's what you're doing. If you're drinking regularly, you are trying to soothe a life. And so let's create a life that doesn't require any of that. Let's change these bad habits for you. Is that so many more people change. So many more people stay in the room and listen. So many more people are open to changing it. They're not powerless. They're 100% powerful. They can change habits, routines, learn about their trauma, their stress, understand emotional regulation, change their environment, all of these factors that drive addictive behavior in people's lives. I think there's one other thing with the A word is that, you know, absolutely, this is what we are doing here at 1 Year No Beer, and it's something, okay, we focused on alcohol now, but it's relevant whatever you're looking at. We believe very strongly that we have discovered is the wrong word, but that we have put together programs that really enable people to make the changes in their life that will eliminate addictive behavior. Okay, reduce significantly, almost to a place where it's eliminated. I think I don't know anyone who doesn't at some point do compulsive behavior. But I think that it becomes far less not needed when you're living in flow with your life and you've got these things right.
Yeah, 100%. And having been through your program, I think that was one of the things that attracted me to it. That it was quite a positive vibe of it. And I think, like you're talking about, often when you're looking at addicts and things like that, it's often there's kind of a negative association one with the word, and it's trying to almost avoid the real underlying problems. And I like you were saying, you associate it with meditation. One of the things I wanted to ask you about, this is switching gears a little bit here, and obviously you as an entrepreneur, so you mentioned earlier your ADHD when you were younger, and you mentioned you almost what I would call like a bit of a workaholic, even though it's related to studying, till like 3 a.m. I guess one of the things I wanted to ask about is that obviously is something that needs to be controlled by you, but now that you are kind of in a better place spiritually, mentally, do you see that as something that's actually quite a good thing now because you're productive, it helps you in your business? Is it something that you've almost learned to control in a way and has been quite useful?
I think it all was. I'm incredibly grateful of all the ADHD-ness through the whole of my life. I mean, understanding it, and some of that was tough younger. For instance, I was just described as a naughty boy or a bad kid because I was just so hyperactive and behavior. And then I went through quite a long period of my time just trying to prove that constantly correct. So I set fire to whatever I could, and sometimes the village. But later, as I started to take this, I mean, it was such a driving force. It's unbelievable. The drive that I have is enormous. I compare that to other people who I work around, and they just don't have the same energy drive. It's like having a nuclear power station inside me, getting stuff done. So I've always loved that. Now, the key thing is, I don't think I'm ever going to find a place of equilibrium. I don't think work-life balance exists. I don't think peace and harmony and the angels are singing. I don't think that's what it is. One of my clients who currently on our high-level coaching program said the other day that changing a relationship with alcohol is more like rally driving. Right, where actually these guys are out of control, but 100% in control. Right, to be in that relationship of alcohol where you're in control. Is it you nearly slide off, and if I think about my entrepreneurial journey, it's the same. It's not okay. Sure, it's going like that, but it's like up, down, 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 up. I mean, we were at 30 staff at one point. Now we're at 7, 8. It's like changes, and that is the entrepreneurial journey, and that is the journey of life. And so to answer the question of like, Do I still have to do things to... Yeah, absolutely. I saw my psychotherapist and psychiatrist this morning for a great hour-and-a-half session. I'm still doing the work. I believe firmly that if I can't help myself, how can I possibly help others? We're going to talk about psychedelic therapy, and I'm doing some psychedelic therapy tomorrow, in fact, which I'm very excited / nervous about. I think that I am still trying to understand myself at a greater level. I want to be able to progress through each of these parts myself. I understand that there's still addiction in my life, addictive behavior in my life. Therefore, there must be trauma that I have not dealt with, and that is part of the reason why I continue on these journeys to discover. So, yeah, it's an ongoing work in progress. And meanwhile, while I'm on this work in progress, I'm just going to keep sharing with the insights I come through incredibly openly, vulnerably. You ask me anything about anything I've discovered about myself, it'll come out. That's just the way I want to exist.
Yeah, love what you mentioned. And there's that phrase everyone says, right, fall in love with the journey rather than the destination, which is exactly what you're talking about. I do want to cover the psychedelic therapy, as you mentioned. So let's get into that. What type of psychedelic therapy do you do?
So at 6 years old, my parents were given an ultimatum, drugs or counselling. And they didn't like the idea of giving a child drugs, so they went to counselling. And I'm very, very grateful for that. You know, my counsellor, Dr. Hall, when I was young there, was amazing, an amazing friend. And he started to get me think about my brain. In my 20s, I sought out counselling again on my own. And then counselling, CBT, psychotherapy, almost all of my life have I done talk therapy. Coaching, lots of coaching. I've talked about everything. I've talked about some of the most crazy things, the wildest things, the thoughts in my brain. It's a wild place in there. And yet, whilst much of that therapy helped me in the moment or helped me make some changes, when I went first of all to do psychedelic therapy, which was at the German Neuroscience Hospital here, did ketamine therapy, I was absolutely blown away. Honestly, it was one session was 100 hours of psychotherapy. And I think to describe the experience, every time I talked about something, when you talk about something, you're usually discussing with somebody a bit about the day, and they hear an anchor and they follow the anchor down, and down it gets to a moment, and the moment suddenly comes a reveal, oh, I feel this shame. And the moment you say that, boom, the wall comes down, the tears come down, you're like scared and judgment. Is this person judging me and everything else? And sometimes you can get it out, and maybe it needs more sessions and everything else. So there's an awful lot of complication in talk therapy. When you go and do something like psychedelic therapy, and of course there's lots of different types, and I've done tons of different types, but in this situation I'd done 3-4 hours with a psychotherapist, and then she took me to places I wanted to go. So we went under with a drip and with the ketamine, and then she talked to me as we went through into some of these places. And I compare it to, like, imagine it's like the mental version of this. Physically, you have your arm cut off. It's been cut off with a sword right in front of you, right? And you can see all the bits and the blood and everything else like that, but you can't feel anything. Now, conceptually it's incredibly sore, right? But you're looking at it in all its detail and with wonder in your eyes. Like, wow, that's what it's like psychologically. It's nothing like talk therapy. It's like you can open up and you want to open in, and you're like, wow, what's in here? Look at this shame. And look at this. It really was amazing. So the moment I did the ketamine therapy, I got really interested in it. I tried some psilocybin stuff, and again had massive, huge discoveries. I give you one here, which was pretty powerful for me. In this moment, I felt my daughter's pain, my oldest daughter. And, I'm kind of hard on her sometimes, and I feel about whether I'm too hard on her or, hey, kids, let's not go into that, but hey, I just am. And I felt this, and I started to get this feeling, and then I felt her pain. In fact, I almost felt her, right? I was her. And here I was in this moment, bawling my eyes out, feeling her pain. And suddenly I was looking back at myself, and I was seeing my angry face or my childish face in a moment where I've just snapped at her or behaved short or been quick or anything, or been judgmental or been shameful or any of those things. And I felt her pain immensely. And I was so sad in that moment for her pain, just crying and like, God, look what I've done. And I felt this guilt and everything else. And then all of a sudden the lightning struck me. And I was like, but Ruari, this is how you treat yourself. And I was like, wow, my daughter represents me. And of course our children represent us. But how I was being to her was how I was behaving with myself. It was more than just the other daughter, who I love my daughters very much. I was being harder on Tilly because she represented my inner self. And I'm like, why am I talking to myself like that? And so as a conscious level, when I took away from it, I was like, I know that I can learn to be kinder to myself by being kinder to my daughter, because it's the same thing represented to me. It was huge. And then I've also done I've done the plant stuff, ayahuasca, DMT, and in sessions like that, it's been very, very different. Again, very, very different experiences. But I think some of the, one of the more recent ones, probably about a month ago now, I discovered something so huge about myself that I, without a doubt, will profoundly change me. I explained it this morning to my psychiatrist. God, it sounds like a complete mentalist, but I just want everybody to know that I can't help others unless I do the work myself. And that's how I firmly believe that I just have to keep putting myself under the knife to understand all this stuff in a great depth from myself and my own experiences, and then I can confidently help others. But the life change wasn't like I suddenly went from being this person to being, I'm suddenly a completely different human because I've gone and done a days of experience. That wasn't it, right? But what it did is it forever changed the direction. I cannot be that same person I was before because of the insight I had in that moment. The insight was so enormous that I'd been using this thing to torture myself for years, right? I've been using this thing, and that it's something that I could change, and that by simply doing a few things, I could go and change it over time. That will fundamentally change who I am. I'm a big advocate of doing any kind of therapy. I think that we all need therapy. We all need to try and understand these. We've never been given the tools to understand our emotions. We all have trauma, right? Trauma is not just big, horrible experiences. I don't have a particularly, well, apart from falling off a boat at 2 years old, which is fairly traumatic, drowning. But lots of people out there are like, I don't have anything like that. It's not conscious. Trauma is in the eye of the beholder. Trauma is the perception of a moment from a child which cannot understand in that moment, and it gets hard-coded. And then we spend the rest of our lives living out situations to prove our trauma true, even though we don't realize it, that we're doing this on repeat every day. Subconsciously, we're trying to create situations to prove the thing we say about ourselves in our subconscious true. And that just blew my mind when I started to understand that. And I also learned, and we now help people with this, to learn to put that down, to learn to stop repeating those behaviors. We no longer need to create these situations to prove that you're not worthy, or to prove that you're not enough, or to prove that you are lonely, right? This was a big one for me, loneliness. So anyway, it's amazing stuff.
Yeah, love the story about your daughter. Extremely powerful, and also the quote, trauma is not conscious a lot of the time. I've done a lot of the things you talked about with psychedelic therapy, but I always like to play devil's advocate on this podcast. So, some people may listen to this and think, ketamine, psilocybin, which is like mushrooms, those are like club drugs. Those are recreational drugs as well. And this is just, this kind of druggy therapy. What would you say to people who are listening thinking that?
Yeah, I totally understand why you would think that. That's exactly the way society, the media, the government and everything else wants to people very firmly to believe that, the war on drugs and all of that kind of stuff. However, just stick into Google any of those substances and put therapy or research behind it now, and you can't ignore the level of data. In the next couple of years, MDMA, ecstasy is going to be legalized, most likely in the UK, certainly around other areas of the world, so that psychotherapists and therapy centers can use it for PTSD. That PTSD is most likely to be the first part because it's so shocking, and this is why the FDA and things like that will permission these kind of drugs. But anyway, I'm waffling. Have a look at that. The main thing with it is, this stuff was around and changing people's lives in an incredibly positive way back in the 60s, and then they banned it. Watch the Netflix documentary, How to Change Your Mind. There's 4 or 5 part series. It covers MDMA, LSD, psilocybin, can't remember what else, ketamine, and it's showing the latest research. It's showing the great science, the amazing work that these substances are enabling psychotherapists, psychiatrists, therapists in general to do, and to help people. So don't be judgmental. Go and do your research, and you'll see for yourself. It's absolutely coming. There is no stopping it. I think the bit I feel very strongly about here is that we need a reclassification of our drugs. I'm sorry to tell you this, but alcohol is absolutely shit. It is the shittest drug. It's so bad. It's so bad for your brain. It's so bad for your body. It's 100% toxic. I mean, do you know what your liver has to go through, what your body has to go through every time you drink? Now, you're like, well, hang on a minute, Ruari, you drink. Yeah, because it's the world's most prevalent drug. It's so ingrained in society. It's expected. There's peer pressure, all of that stuff. There's lots of reasons why people might choose to drink. I understand that, right? But as a substance, it's absolutely crap, and it's just awful on people, their health, their mental health. It's terrible for the brain, creates anxiety, creates a depression, etc., etc. We need a reclassification of drugs. We need a better substance, more prevalent in society, that enables things like being able to relax. I'm really excited about Trip in the UK. Trip is CBD beer, and these things are starting to come forward. There will be a day, it might be a long way away, where you could have an MDMA beer. Now imagine going out for dinner and having a light touch MDMA drink with your wine, or an MDMA wine with your wife. You're going to spend that evening in love, connected, feeling great. This is why MDMA was used in couples therapy. So I know it's a controversial topic. A great one to listen to is Professor David Nutt. Listen to his podcast, Drug Science, and he's been advocating a reclassification of drugs for years. In fact, he was kicked out of the government for trying to prove that alcohol was one of the worst, if not the worst drug out there, in terms of harm, both to society and people at large. So yeah, we need to rethink alcohol. It's shit, and we need better substances available to people. At the end of the day, when we're living such a stressful life and we're not given the coping skills and the mechanisms, society will still want something to take the edge off, and various other things like that.
Yeah, I think you and I could probably talk for another hour about the reclassification of drugs, but we won't go down that rabbit hole for now. So whenever I post about not drinking, I get quite a few friends and even strangers message me around, I'm curious about doing it, but I don't know how to start. So, anyone who's listening who's kind of identified, hey, I want to stop drinking, either because it's a problem or even it's not a huge problem, but they just don't have hangovers anymore. What are some of those initial steps? What do you recommend for people who are first out in 1 year no beer? They're a few days in.
Totally. First of all is getting awareness, starting to really understand your habits and your routines. Building good, healthy habits is critical. So exercise will help you release more dopamine, and also, it's like they call it a shower, a bath, bubble bath for your brain every time you exercise. Meditation, breath work, add those in because it will really help with it. In the early days, I actually recommend going out to events. The faster you can change your mindset around alcohol, the better. And alcohol-free drinks are so key to changing your relationship with alcohol. You get all of the psychology, but none of the poison by drinking alcohol-free drinks. So yeah, and I think it's really important, society is what created our relationship with alcohol. Doing it on your own, doing it quietly, doing it with shame and all of that stuff, don't do that. All it's doing is exacerbating the issue. join a club, join a tribe, join 1 Year No Beer, a massive community, sign up to a program like that, follow steps. It's just simple. People are like, why do I want to pay to not drink? Oh, look, it's complex. Why would you want to pay to get six-pack? Or you can run around outside and get a six-pack yourself, no problem. But most people can't because they don't know how. And then when they follow an expert, they get there quicker. So it's exactly the same thing. Just sign up to a program like 1 Year No Beer. There's loads of us. If you don't like 1 Year No Beer, there's other wonderful programs out there. But get into a community, follow the steps. It's proven 95% of our members say we change their relationship with alcohol. And I think the big thing with this is, hey, this is not forever. You want to have a better relationship with alcohol. That's what the majority of people are looking for. Come and do a 28-day challenge, a 90-day challenge, something like that. Change your relationship with it back with it. And if you want to, then you'll be able to reintroduce it at a much better level afterwards. You'll be more in control. And that's what we do now in our high-level program. So we take business owners, senior leaders, execs, founders, etc. through an 8-week program where we guarantee at the end they'll be able to control their relationship with alcohol. And for many people, that's controversial because they say, well, there is no control, moderation doesn't exist. I say bullshit, I'm sorry, that we can help people have a healthier relationship, even though it's an addictive substance, because we can see that with heroin, right? You can see that with other addiction or other addictive behaviors. Smoking is an example. You can change these things. You can moderate. People can moderate. Yes, you're going to have to make some significant change in your life, especially if you're drinking every day and heavily. Then yes, that's going to be a significant challenge for you to be able to control your relationship with alcohol. But if you want to, I believe you firmly can, as long as you make the changes.
Love it. This has been super interesting. Just last thing, if anyone wants to learn more about 1 Year No Beer or any type of resources about, giving up alcohol, where do you recommend they go?
Totally. Well, we have a podcast, so you can listen to the podcast. It's on Spotify and Apple and all those good things. We have a blog, lots of free content that we put out there. Check out the YouTube channel. That's all the freebie stuff. Loads of stuff to help you on your way there. Please enjoy it. If you want to get there quicker and do it, with a planned program and a great community, then sign up to one of our programs, oneyearnobeer.com. We're on Facebook, 1 Year No Beer, or OYNB, Instagram, not yet Twitter, but I'm coming, Elon, I'm coming. No, we are on Twitter. OYNB UK. And then I think the big thing is, if you are a business owner, senior leader, exec, or performing at a high level, and you want to get complete control of your relationship with alcohol, you want that done, you realize that there's some reasons in your life that need to change. You just don't know what they are, whether that's your environment or how you deal with stress, emotional regulation, past trauma, or the various other factors that drive an addictive behavior. Then come and check out our program, Complete Control. It's also on the website, oneyearnobeer.com. Just click Complete Control up there. It's a pretty cool program. I'm super proud of it. It's something we're trying to scale right now. We're trying to work with some health insurers in the US, which is exciting. We kind of remotely monitor people and track them daily. And if they're not doing their daily habits and routines, we're on the phone to them after 48 hours to kick them up the ass. So it's extreme accountability, really good health monitoring, and it's having massive, massive transformations. We've had people say profoundly life-changing. So yeah, super proud.
Obviously, as a sales guy, I love the fact you call people and hold them accountable, so that's great. So yeah, Rory, thanks a lot for coming on. Really enjoyed this.
Thank you very much for having me, Michael.